war. And the first one is discipline. And and Pekka said that it starts from small things, like how you fold your clothes, how you make your bed, how you keep everything tidy, how you keep your gear, like everything with discipline. And we have seen how the Russians have been behaving. We have seen how they have been behaving, and also what they have left behind them. And the other one, which is like also crucial, is truth. Speaking the truth. If something is not working, you have to say it's not working and not lie that it's working. So if I think of this quote unquote general mobilization, which I I have big doubts, and I think of these two words, discipline and truth. How would you see that this equation would even work at all? Thank you.
Yeah, I think those are two great points I did not catch. I caught a little bit, in and out of working of his talk. Great talk. I think the discipline is really interesting. A lot of times people see the discipline of militaries and don't understand the multiple purposes of it, right? So the transition from a civilian to a military person, about doing all those things. We have a definition of discipline. One is a different discipline of doing what you're told to do, basically following orders. The attack that healed that moment, or attack the healed moment. And then there's another one of doing the right thing in the absence of orders. And that discipline starts from day one you enter the military. So sometimes there's a reason for dressing the same and following strict orders and all that stuff. But it all comes to the head in combat. And some soldiers can do a career and never understand the true meanings to discipline. And there's a lot of famous quotes and stuff like that, where people think that just the rote following of orders is the most powerful in the discipline. But you've built a soldier, and this is the echelon, and I think that why that time is mattering. It takes, let's say, 4 months to make a private, 4 years to make a sergeant or an officer. These years, there is that transition to understanding all these elements of the military. So when you see a Russian soldier, you can quickly realize that neither form of discipline is a part of how before they got there, because they wasn't a part of their it's just a sign of military effectiveness in that formation. The trust one, fascinating as well. We say in the U.S. military that trust is the bedrock of our military, right? The bedrock of soldiering in general is that you trust that your leaders have your interests in mind. You trust in logistical formation. It really crosses over into every discipline. And if that trust is lost, it's near impossible to get back once you've broken the trust. And that trust can be a psychological trust, like the soldier trust that you have their interest in mind. You trust that you're not going to just do things to just allow him to die. You trust in a person. So it has all these, just like the discipline element, it has all these cross leveling purposes in a military formation. And it all starts to unravel when you don't have all these things working together, right? And you've heard me talk enough to that each element in and of itself isn't can you survive without it? But it's when everything's absent that you don't have a military. It's not the literally centuries of military sciences, like learning what works in both leading men and women in combat, but also putting them in a combat environment, sustaining them, sustaining the will to fight, all these elements that we spend a lot of time here picking apart the Russian military and why that mobilization wouldn't work, right? Because you would not have, they would be joining a broken system. It's not that, and you may have heard me recently on wherever it is. I've gotten to the point where it really irks me to talk about the Russian military because by every framework of just the definition of the military, how it all works, it's not present at this moment in the Russian forces. They're just not doing military things. They're not. They don't care about military things in most of their formations that we're seeing. So like, kind of like something like just like stat, I don't know, it's like a nail in my foot, and I'm stepping like to call it a military. And this is again why just throwing thousands of forced conscripts into the equation it won't work. It just won't get you a fighting formation. Hopefully that answered it. I know,
Thank you, John. Yes, thank you. Just a
sure.
follow up, please. If we think of Wagner, which has recruited, let's say, 6,000 criminals, where is the discipline and where is the trust?
Right. No. So this is the point where, so one, a private military company, which is what Wagner is, usually relies on prior military personnel to instill a military structure, just of a group of people. But you'll see that they'll actually perform like a military, and Wagner's been used as a military. When they go to a prison and ask, so the motivation, right? So we talk about motivations. They're not asking for some people to join and to be trained and to fight as a military force. They're asking people to join a criminal gang set free to do horrible things in Ukraine. So when I look at that, I see something very different than a private military company asking somebody to join them and then doing military tasks. I think they're going to prisons to get men who want to do bad things and say, and to give them that motivation. Like, not only will I allow you to do the things that you got you here, but I'm saying you won't come back to this place. It's giving the worst of a society the things that it thrives on. So I could see how it would get them a lot of willing participants in their genocidal campaigns and shock force that they put together. That isn't, again, it's not a military formation. They're not doing military things. They're not keeping themselves together in military ways. It's literally adding deviants to your gang to do really bad things in the name of a country, of a state actor, and they should be held accountable for doing that.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, so I just think the whole thing with Putin having an announcement and something like this, it's just to confuse us and to distract us. It's like a rule in media. If you have a headline for 3 or 4 days, you may be able to kill it with another headline, or it will persist. And we saw it multiple times when we saw what happened in Irpin, in Bucha, and now we see it with the mass graves in Izium. They try to have a new narrative and got some new headlines for the news so the media can jump on it, and they want to distract. I think, in my opinion, they want to distract again from all the horrible things that happens. So there will no serious things will be in such a speech from Putin or something, because if you want to do something serious, you do it. You don't talk about it. The second thing, I had a question, and it was about yeah, we had the things in Germany, our general inspector Herzog said about yeah, the offensive in Ukraine is uh, uh, not really working out good and everything, and I think we all know that is bullshit. But on the other side, we had I think General Freuding was his name, and he made a long interview, and he was really enthusiastic
Flooding up.
and Freuding, yeah. And he was really enthusiastic, and the international media also recognized his interview and was really good speaking about him. And I was wondering, maybe John Spencer could help us with that. Is there such a big world between a general inspector and an actual general, which is maybe more closer to the actual experiences? In this kind of form, or how it is does it happen that there is such a kind of different view on such, I think, in my opinion, almost clear thing.
So I'm not sure I get the. I didn't see the interview, so I don't know if I understand what was being said. That's kind of didn't make common sense.
John,
Actually,
John, I think what he's trying to ask is there was a political leader, a general of the with a gentleman with the title of general in the political sphere, and a actual general, and they had a different varying opinion on the progress of the counteroffensive. And so he's asking which one of those would you take more credence in? And I can pretty much get the answer to that.
so I will say this: I judge the man. I don't judge the rank. I've met some really stupid generals, and I've met some icons of warrior scholars, and we've had many in here where you understand you quickly can measure their their experiences. I mean, outside of the Ukrainian military officers, I mean there are few that have the experiences of fighting a peer competitor at in recent times as the Ukrainians do. But which generals would I value their opinions? And you can quickly tell that from somebody if they're a student of history, if they even understand war fighting. So maybe I would go with the military officer who has had training and education in military things before I go with a political officer carrying the weight of general. But there have been political officers carrying the nomenclatures who were um, amazing students. Even you think about some of I can speak to U.S. generals like Eisenhower, who didn't I don't think had anything above a battalion command and stuff like that. But measure the man, not the rank, and weigh what they say against some of the greats that we've had, even in the space, like General McRyan, General Ben, uh, Hodges. These people that you can tell that not only do they have the experience and the background, they are students of warfighting. They're students of history. They understand the connection, what we call the bridge between political strategy and military tactics. Who can connect for us in this space what we're seeing tactically to what we believe and nobody knows other than Ukrainian are the operational and strategic objectives. So yeah, outside of knowing, I'll go with the general for now. But like I said, I've met a lot of stupid generals in a lot of different militaries. It's just the nature of the system. But the true warrior scholars, they rise and shine quickly. Uh, to include the ones that are open and that's the most powerful ones who um, take counsel from their soldiers to and staffs and what that's what I come to this space to learn. I am a student of war, and Yeah, I'll give opinions on what I'm seeing happening, but I'm also here to learn and how I consume and make those judgments. Because in some elements, some of this, but to somebody to have anybody who comes in especially publicly, says what the Ukrainians are doing is anything other than a decisive winning. They haven't won anything. They haven't achieved. But anybody who argues that the Ukrainians aren't achieving a decisive campaign of winning in every this, it just should be tagged as either stupid, literally they don't know, or there's some other reason that they're making such ill-informed statements.
If I may,
Thank you. That was actually the point I wanted to hear. Thank you.
if I may add something, because what Colonel Spencer said is perfectly true, but it also highlights, if you look at the details of the two careers of the two people, it highlights the tragic associated with these armed forces in Germany. Because Christian Freudig is my age, and Ewald Zorn is a decade older. Ewald Zorn is an artillery officer, and then he rapidly became, how shall I call this, a rear guard staff officer. And at a later stage, he attained high rank by means of becoming the head of the Rapid Reaction Force at a time when the Rapid Reaction Force maybe was not so rapid. And he has attained that highest rank of the German military by means of being in sync with those of his generation. Whereas Christian Freudig came to join the force exactly at the time when the Soviet Union fell, and he is a tanker. So whilst we're seeing a war which is dominated by artillery, and Mr. Zorn should understand it, the tanker who understands what's necessary, and if you watch his interviews over the past many months, because he's constantly bi-weekly interviewed, by the way, by the television channel, so to say, the propaganda channel of the German Bundeswehr, and gives note and report on what German military believes about certain situations, both in terms of internal data and process and procedures, but also in regard to the Ukraine war against Russia. Christian Freudig could not have seemed more engaged than in this interview, because as a tanker, he knows what's necessary. As a tanker who has been, from a very early age, been educating tank commanders, because that became his job very quickly. And he has risen through the ranks as one of the more gifted German tank commanders. I mean, there's also von Sandrath, of course, in Stettin and the Multinational Corps. Big shout out to our boys there. There's a different generation, and there are people who, across each generation, who understand warfare. And even if they have not had as much combat experience as other troops, they fully appreciate what soldiers do. I can only highlight people should watch the interview with Christian Freudig, with or without captions. You do not even need to listen to what he says. Watch his body language, and you will understand that there are many people in the German armed forces who fully support Ukraine and fully understand what's going on. And it's a shame that the others don't.
Yeah, it's a tough topic that I've struggled with for a long time, and one of the reasons that we all like to quote some of the greats is because this stuff, when you there's this long list of things that somebody that I respect listed that you have to know or be a student of in order to understand war. But, and as an old soldier, I do have that. And Clausewitz even has again, because it just makes things simpler when people have simplified it. If you haven't felt the realities of war, it's really hard to understand in the bridge from the soldier level to to the strategic decision, but we can feel what right looks like, and never just take somebody. You could have years of military experience, and I've seen this, but it's a very specific type of experience. It's created a closed-minded person that, like, I have this many years of combat experience. I know, like, yeah, like, look, you could just know a lot of wrong things, and the worst kind. And there's been some recent articles. The worst kind of officer or soldier is the one who doesn't understand the war that they are in, and that's the people that quickly. I like history in some aspects where in World War II, one of the first things that General Eisenhower does is fire. I mean, the number is insane. He fires an insane number of generals because they were of a generation and of almost an anti-intellectual, an inability to adapt, an inability to understand the war they're in. This is tough business. I mean, war is complex and hard to understand. But it sounds like, actually, I didn't hear either one, but it sounds like the tanker gets it.
Absolutely. The tanker there is like Sherman or Sheridan. Mr. Zorn is more like McClellan.
That's some apt analogies. I like it. I get it. Yeah. So, I mean, if you really dig into some of these people that we use, you got to appreciate the context and the man or the person. But the most powerful of all of them have been not only have experience, but have an element of openness and are students of war. And I think our group is just such an evolution of that, where we bring together so many variety of experts here to analyze, question, and just discuss all elements of war. Because war is not just about fighting, although that's a huge part of it. It is about the application of violence or threat of violence. But there's so many elements, and if a military officer is very closed-minded and not a student of the profession, then they really get outside that term of profession, in my mind.
Thank you, John. John, I want to be considerate of your time. You good for a little while?
I appreciate that. I'm actually got probably about 2 or 3 more minutes, and I got to head over to pick up the oldest kid. Walking the dogs, and luckily the transmission never cut out, so I was good. But yeah, I can take 1 or 2 more as I'm transitioning to that pickup.
Okay. For those that have your hands up right now, if you don't have a question for Colonel Spencer, if you would just drop for 1 second, flash it, and that way I can get him to answer questions for people that have questions for him, if you don't mind. You don't have a question for him, just take your hand down and put it back up. I know where you are. Okay, I guess everybody has a question for Colonel Spencer. Okay, John, thank you. Shylock, and then it'll be Jettas and Big Papa if we got time. And then Wendy, when you come back up, you'll be actually next.
Thank you for taking my question. The Stryker 105mm mobile gun platform is set to be retired from U.S. service by the end of this year. Given that it's going to be retired, and panel say that infantry fighting vehicles and infantry support vehicles are something that Ukraine particularly needs, do you think this would be a good system to send to Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Stryker as a platform in general, but understanding the level of needs in Ukraine, and we've talked about that from, they're using MRAPs, which aren't fighting vehicles. They're using, they have the ability to use any vehicle platform that can be sent to them, and they will use it to great capability. Sometimes you just need a vehicle to move from point A to point B. And that's why we see pickup trucks and Humvees, things that aren't meant to be fighting vehicles, but absolutely could they use some of those systems and use even the MGS platform effectively in a fighting formation? 100%. So I would actually love to see that.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, Jairus?
Yeah, hello, John. So I'm waiting eagerly for your new book, Urban Warfare. I believe it's coming next month. And I have a question basically about Europe initiative to train Ukrainians. So we saw UK were training them for, I believe, 2-3 months. People who didn't have military experience before. And now I think Germany, France, and Poland said that we are taking this initiative to roll Europe level. And I was just thinking, from a person who has military background, basically how long it takes, for to train a person who has some sort of specialization, etc. Because I'm just looking into big picture. If you have a bunch of infantry troops without specializations and limited capacity of commandment, like leaders who will lead them, there's like a limit you can put them into action, right? So going forward, it's probably a matter of getting more specialized guns rather than a lot of infantry, which might be trained for only a few months or etc. So what's your take on these initiatives?
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the comments about my book called Understanding Urban Warfare, which should be out the 1st or 2nd at latest week of October, and you can pre-order it now. I've tweeted it a couple times. I'm really excited about that book. So the question about training, it's one, what do I think about it? It's amazing, and 100%, and it just shows the strength of our Ukrainians partners to do that, to house, transport, train, and any amount of training is going to be just a amazing boost in the arm to the Ukrainian formations. You're just to baseline people on the basics of soldiering, right? What we call basic training, which is usually anywhere from 5 to 10 weeks. Ours is a certain amount, it's 10 weeks, but it's ebbed and flowed. But baselining an individual on shooting, soldiering, moving, communicating, first aid is a huge boost. And this is the way that you increase a formation, right? You need fresh soldiers, but those you can either train them as units or you can train them as individuals. And I think what we're seeing is a baselining of individuals that then can be fed into formations. Even if they're building formation, the Ukrainians have been extremely disciplined about building coherent, cohesive teams, and training and not pushing people out into the front line until they're ready. And that's what you get. I think the ability to send them to another location to be trained by other experts, which they are doing in Ukraine, right? They have training camps in Ukraine, and they've had them for a long time, but there's a capacity issue. By increasing Ukraine's capacity to turn a civilian into a soldier, both the baseline and then you're right, the specialty skills. But even in the specialty skills from like to whatever, there's a basic formation of other experienced soldiers that don't have to start, that can actually incorporate them into the information rapidly because they're blind. So this to me is about being able to expand military rapidly. Soldiers jobs for this still, so it's an amazing thing.
John, we're starting to lose you.
Excuse me?
If you can hear me, are you
Sure.
moving? Because we're starting to lose you, unless that's mine.
Yeah, I think we are losing him.
Yeah, we lost you, John. If you can hear me, okay, he's already he put down his mic. Okay, Big Papa, I'm gonna go ahead and go to John because he was before you. The Colonel has left us for right now, and I'll come to you next. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, John. Wendy.
Oh, thanks, Daryl. Just a comment, and it was going to be a short question to Colonel Spencer, but just a comment before I have to drop down and continue the Wendyization of Europe. Yeah, an empire founded by war has to maintain itself by war. As Montesquieu said, the country currently known as the Russian Federation is undoubtedly an empire. It was founded on the blood of its slaves, those in indentured servitude, and as we've heard on this space before, the bodies of whom still lie under the ruins of St. Petersburg and within the concrete foundations of its buildings and skyscrapers in Moscow. In this empire's metropole of Moscow, the regime is introducing more putative measures to keep its falling empire intact. So as an empire, it has consistently treated the nations bordering it as the peripheral territories of an empire. It coerces its peripheral citizens, such as those from the ethnic regions of Russia, into war, as we've seen during this war, this invasion of Ukraine. It has a long track record of invading and terrorizing its neighboring peripheral territories. Like any core nation of an empire that runs its course and can no longer exploit the people it milks to maintain it, once that source of exploitation dries up, it will either have to show adaptation to its new situation or accommodation of opposition political ideologies. Moscow has shown none of these facets of survival for an empire. So I just think we've seen some evidence today and recently that there is a potential impact of the rumors of mobilization, the rumors of martial law in certain places, as M correctly pointed out. The recent unrest in Chechnya that's just been reported, the delayed announcement of this ridiculous farce that's currently going on with regards to the current leadership of the Kremlin. Now, we know the belligerence of this regime, but the war's end for this regime cannot now end at a withdrawal to its internationally recognized borders, as was posited in the last hour, because this won't be acceptable to Ukraine and its allies. We know that there's 3.5 million Ukrainians deported, which need to be safely returned home under the supervision of a reputable organization. So there are things which lie as foundational demands of Ukrainian victory conditions, along with its restoration of sovereign territory, its reparations for this illegal invasion and war. So I was going to ask the Colonel, and anyone else who'd like to chime in on this, what evidence do you see the structure holding this loose group of armed forces together is starting to come apart? And thanks for your great co-hosting, Darren. Cheers.
Cheers. In my opinion, the use of force and coercion, and that that can do a lot if it's ingrained into the society. Um, if they have, if the people think that something bad will happen if they do something to go against the leadership, and they think that their family will be just disappeared as the Russians have done, that fear has the likely effect, even if it's unfounded, because it's happened in the past. And they do it still. And so it's not something that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Oh, that's what they used to do under the Soviet Union. They still do it today. So I think that the fear, and it does a lot to dissuade um, generals and military folks from doing that among the um, disparate peoples. However, someone brought up something about there's some strife going on in Chechnya. The mothers can play a part. Uh, if their sons are not coming home, they could play a part in something bigger. But whether it goes national uh, will remain to be seen, in my opinion. But I think that fear thing has more to do with keeping everybody in line than anything else. And it's not loyalty, it's fear.
Yeah, well said, Daryl. Fear is fundamental to this regime's survival. The, the prospect of, I mean, the 54,000 confirmed KIA that the country currently known as the Russian Federation has lost in Ukraine. That's just one element of this. It's the conservative estimates of double the number of wounded, which are now going to be visible around certain areas of the Russian Federation. And as we know, the Soviet Union and Russia does not treat its wounded and its wounded veterans particularly well. Um, these kind of elements of that they perceive of as shame upon the nation. This is going to be hugely significant within Russia. So yeah, this, you know, the visible wounded, the visible lack of progress within a war in which they've spent months trying to take a small place in the eastern Donbass, Pisky, I think, and the potential loss of Crimea. These are cultural shocks with ramifications for the leadership, which the leadership cannot. It can fabricate whatever it wants. It can claim any kind of false legitimacy through these sham referendums that it's trying to organize as it beats a hasty retreat. But there is an inescapable fact here that Russians are aware that they are losing the war they started. They are aware that Ukraine seeks justice for the crimes committed against its citizens. They are aware that the ramifications of these crimes are going to last for many, many years because Ukraine has a long arm of justice. It is the more moral army. It treats all POWs in accordance with the Geneva Convention, and that's as Colonel Spencer and I think yourself were saying earlier today. When I tuned in, you know, the best course of action for any Russian soldier west of the Dnieper right now is to walk slowly with your hands in the air towards the Ukrainian forces. But the ramifications of this loss and the perceived shame upon the nation, which has been caused by the Kremlin, but not only by the Kremlin, by its supplicants, and its many willing participants, which keep the system functioning. This has widespread ramifications. So the next 48 hours may certainly be interesting. I guess we'll know if I guess we can gauge the importance of it if we see Swan Lake being played on repeat, you know, in grainy black and white footage, in replacement of a speech from the current Kremlin inhabitant. So thanks once again for this space.
John, what I want to do is I want to touch back on this in a little bit. I'm gonna let a few in the lull that we have. I'm gonna come back to this, the mention of Afghanistan and the years, the multiple, 10 years, so that they would get back to this in a second. I'm gonna go to Big Papa. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I agree with what you and what John was just saying. I think we, in this room, we move, we talk about the changes day to day a lot, and we don't look back. I mean, can you imagine 7 or 8 months ago, someone telling you that Russia is going to get to the point in this war where they're going to be asking, they're going to be cleaning out prisons, they're going to be asking help from Iran and North Korea? I mean, really, are you kidding me? It's just, the thing is just crumbling, man. But I did have a question for Daryl, for you and John Spencer, if he's still on. I don't think he's on anymore, but I'd love to hear what you think because of your military service. You've seen everything as far as military aid that's been given and everything, and seen what they have and what they've been using. Is there any, putting aside Bradleys and Abrams and all that stuff, do you see anything that in your experience was like, hey man, this was really valuable to us, we could really use this, something that's not too a high ticket item that you're surprised maybe that they haven't got yet?
I'm going to be honest with you. My time was so long ago. Some of the things that may be available, to the troops at this point in time, I would defer to somebody a little bit younger that has more recently exited the services for that. And I just want to be honest about that because we had the old steel pots when I was in. We didn't get the Kevlar helmets until the first generation Kevlar helmets until I was about out. So that tells you something.
Yeah, but you got experience. I don't have any experience. I never served or anything. But one thing I have seen, I'm still seeing pickup trucks and they're mounting machine guns on them, and then I see a armored Humvee with a grenade launcher. I thought, well, that's got to be better, right? And if we have that, let's, instead of sending 50, send 500 of them. Things like that. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Hummers that they could send if that's what they would want. I mean, we exited the Hummer for a more survivable piece of equipment because of the IED in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So that was the major flaw with the Hummers. The armor on it was not adequate enough for survival against those. It's still survivable against some small arms fire. However, RPGs, things of that nature, the man pad, so to speak, is something that's a bit more prolific in this war than it was in previous ones. They had them in Afghanistan, they had them in Iraq, but they were not. The focus was not necessarily on the on the truck. I mean, on the Hummers first. They were to disable the column. That was the way they would be used against a Hummer, to just disable a column, not necessarily direct fire, against fire, so to speak. So,
Right, I got you.
but the Ukrainians are using them in direct fire as they go up against, nests. They're taking the Hummers and going straight in, something that it was not designed for, per se. So, but so they're using the Hummer beyond what we had planned for it.
Yeah, I was gonna quote Axel one time when I asked Axel if I don't remember what it was, a tank or something was better than what the Russians had. And he said it doesn't matter if it's better than what the Russians had. It matters if it's better than what Ukraine has right now. And that's kind of stuck with me. So Axel might appreciate that.
And that's exactly the point.
Much appreciated. Yes, we agree.
All right. Thanks, Daryl. Man, I appreciate it. I'm going to keep listening.
Thank you much. Leonard, I'm going to go to you. And Michael, if you have a question, you don't have your hand raised. So if you want to raise that, hit that little button to raise your hand, I can go to you. But I'm going to go to Leonard for now. And folks, if you've asked your questions, I would ask that you drop yourself down so we can make room for others. Please. Thank you.
Hello, Daryl. Thank you, and good to see you up here again. I just wanted to follow up briefly on exactly what it was that I Like Wendy had laid out for us. And I hope everyone was paying very close attention, because I Like Wendy laid out a crystal clear rendition and analysis of precisely what's going on in the Kremlin today and where this leaves the Kremlin, Russia, and the entire cabal that has been in charge in Moscow. And it cannot be overemphasized, the impact that this debacle that is unfolding for the Russians and the Russian army in Ukraine has upon the leadership cabal, Putin, the Putinites, the Solzhenitsyn, everything wrapped up in the Kremlin today. And I Like Wendy is absolutely correct. This represents a sea change in Russian affairs. And there's been some debate back and forth and so on. And some people say, don't get too alarmed and don't pay too much significance to this, et cetera, et cetera. Wendy is right. These events are unfolding at a level equivalent to what Russia went through in 1905, the debacle after Bloody Sunday and the Russo-Japanese War, in 1917, with the collapse of the Russian army under the Tsar, the last Tsar, soon to be non-existent on the Eastern Front, and even fast forward to 1989, and what caught up with the entire Russian polity under Gorbachev, and what collapsed under the weight of the entire U.S. Star Wars initiative, if you will, in the preceding decade, and Ronald Reagan, of course, to give him his due in that particular respect. But Wendy has it right. This represents a sea change and a sort of the essence of the beginnings of what you might call chaos unfolding in the Kremlin. And some people have said, well, this is well orchestrated. This is clearly part of some masterful propaganda campaign, blah, blah, blah. Not in any sense. This is what Molly McHugh described as a spider's nest in a jar. And there's rampant confusion unfolding in the Kremlin right now. And as opposed to playing a master Wagnerian scheme with the orchestra, this is the chaos of total cacophony in the tune-up pit before the main event. So I would commend I Like Wendy again for his assessment, and how this pretty much highlights the utter moral and logical and spiritual feelings that have haunted Russia literally for the last 100 years. And the chickens are now coming home to roost. And I think Wendy has diagnosed that properly. And just to close out with the observation that was made today on the Russian internet space, that there are millions. The highest running topic by far is how the hell do we get out of Russia now? And that tells you probably all you need to know about today in the Russian Federation. So thank you, and thank you again, Wendy. Great insights.
Leonard, can I just add one thing? I stand in awe that you were so kind as to highlight the historic arc to the confusion which set in the Chekist setup and in the Russian military and operational intelligence in 1905 when dealing with Trotsky, and that being the onset of the chaos which led to the miscalculations and terrible decisions by Nicholas and his regime in the run-up to the First World War, and then to the destruction and chaos of the Russian Revolution. I think you have it right.
Thank you, Axel. And once again, I stand down in favor of your vast expertise on Eastern European, Russian, and assorted history. So thank you also for your great insights. We learn from that every day. Thank you, Axel.
Thank you, Axel. Axel, just to talk about this for a second here, the cost of the Afghanistan war and that whole failure in Afghanistan, do you think that that's playing on the minds of many of the other Russians? I'm sure it's been almost 20 years, but they took a nail in that war as well. And addition to going broke from competition with us during the Cold War. How do you think that that's playing into some of the thoughts of the Russian people?
I would be amiss to say that I could judge the Russian people. What I can highlight is that I tend to believe that there is a strong sentiment in the military intelligence circles in Russia who do understand that they once overreached, because going into Afghanistan was a terrible move in also many ways. Not just because it's the deathbed of empires or the graveyard of empires. Is a good question. Who said it first? Was it Kipling? I don't know. But it is evident still today that this was the single biggest strategic mistake, because it introduced trauma, despair, and massive amount of upheaval into the Russian population. At that point in time, Russian forces were less biased towards minorities, strangely enough, because it was a Soviet force. Yes, they used more and more, the longer their conflict, their invasion in Afghanistan took, they used more and more minority troops. And of course, yes, they did use troops, by the way, conscripts from the Baltics, from Estonia, from Latvia, from Lithuania, from many other, so to say, fringe SSRs, their colonial empire. But they introduced so much information about their failures into so many different republics and into their society that it eroded the remaining, but also already shattered or ripping fabric. And the mixture of both economic discontent growing in the 1980s, because they simply were not just stagnating, they were degrading, and they were misallocating funds, and they were simply finally at the end of their economic tether, introducing this immoral war in Afghanistan, where massive atrocities were committed by regular troops. as well as their special forces. And the reintroduction of that rabid violence and its consequences into the Russian society and into the societies associated with them or with it ripped part of that fabric. I'm not sure that this happens today because we have this skewed allocation of minorities into the serving forces in Ukraine. We have a completely different army today, if one can consider this, as John Spencer quite rightly said, a different army. The feedback loop into Russia proper is not as visceral. Whether the Russian television is a good reflection thereof, difficult to say. But Russian social media may well be a better gauge, albeit that it's controlled, although it is a dictatorship, and although all of this has to be taken with a pound of salt. But I tend to believe that the Russian elites in the military, to the extent that they have not been fully corrupted, and it seems that many of them have, or many parts, many segments thereof have been, that the military intelligence will be the ones who will rebel against this utter strategic defeat, which now turns into a sequence of battlefield defeats, as, by the way, discussed here on this space. And you were there, Daryl, since March. I think that there is a sentiment which will rip the consensus and the pliability of the armed forces and their military intelligence into shreds, and you'll see more upheaval. It won't, from my perspective, I'm very conservative in that regard. I don't believe that they will rebel in as much as that they depose the Tsar. Or if they do, or if he were to pass away, they would probably simply follow the same nationalist tropes anyway. And it would be a heavy-duty fighting withdrawal. But I tend to believe that there is very little left for them to fight for, and that they by now understand it. That's how I would see it.
Thank you, Axel. Okay, Michael, you haven't had your hand up, but you requested to speak. I'm gonna take it that you want to speak. You just don't know how to raise your hand. Michael Starr. Oh, Michaela Starr. Okay. Once. Go ahead,
I'm not sure whether she can hear you.
Michaela?
I don't think she can hear you, Daryl.
Going once. Can you hear me, Axel?
Loud and clear.
Okay. All right. Looks like I am bereft of hands. Okay. Well, that's a good thing for
That's
a
a first.
That's a first. What, you guys don't like the sound of my voice? What is it? I will ask everyone at this point in time, then we're going to take the commercial break. I wish Mr. Atacams was here, then we could have an Atacam commercial. But if you would please retweet the space. If you have missed any of the interviews that we've had, there is a Spotify location that we have a repository of all the interviews, especially the one of today. So if there's something you missed, you're working, please go to the Spotify account and locate the speaker of your choice. It's very good information. If there's something you don't remember about something someone said, that's a good place for reference as well. So,
good evening, Daryl.
Hey, good evening, Ben. How are you?
Oh, I'm hearing you discussing with Axel. how could my evening be any better? I'd like to remind our listeners that they can also follow the MriyaReport profile. We'd love to keep in touch with you, and that's the way to do it.
Ben, we can hardly hear you. You sound as if you're at least 8 meters away from the microphone. Maybe can you check your microphone?
He may have had it happen like it did for me. I was.
Can you hear me now?
A little better, yes.
Does not work.
Better.
No, that's better.
All right. That's a little better. Okay, and so I was saying, if our listeners can follow the profile of the MriyaReport, so we can stay in touch and keep this conversation going, that would be very, very appreciated. And you know, a good conversation is like good wine; it gets better with time. Also, I wanted. You know how we don't do wagers, we don't do bets over here, because it's frowned upon both by Twitter and by the other people who relay us. But no one has anything against a good psychological experiment. So there it is. I'm having a psychological experiment. If someone is interested, I am betting that French-made tanks will be rolling on the Ukrainian plain before German-made tanks. If anyone in here is willing to take this bet, this psychological experiment, I'd be delighted.
Yeah, that's not a real bet anymore.
It's not?
No, the Leclercs are coming.
Yes, they are. Okay. On other news, I was highly amused because for the past 6 months now, even longer, the Moscow stock exchange is a joke. Almost no one can trade on it. Those who can are heavily guarded, so it shows nothing. It means nothing, and it's more a source of amusement than anything else. And despite that, the news of the president and the administration doubling down on their genocidal war against Ukraine today has led the Moscow stock market to crash by over 10%. And I wish finance was here to tell you how amusing and delightful this is. It probably means nothing for the Russian economy. It's just losing a vote that you had no right to lose. And if even in those conditions the Russians don't even manage to manipulate their stock exchange, they're in a worse state than they would have thought they are.
So the ruble is rubble.
The ruble is nothing. But the stock exchange is, the companies, and just if you owned a car or anything in Russia this morning, it is the value per the knowledge of the people who know about the price of things has dropped by 10% today. It is absolutely delightful. Daryl, I think people don't want me to speak, so they've joined and raised their hands. So I guess you can call on them.
All right. Let's see. Candace, are you able to? Candace, are you able to speak without the voiceover now, or are we good? You did good last time.
I think we're good. Daryl, are we?
Yeah, you're good. Lima Charlie.
Well, that is awesome. Like I said, even though M doesn't believe in spells or curses, he is my Prince Charming, and he removed the wand of hell that it was embarrassing and so frustrating for months. But I'm honored to speak to Ben and Daryl, and I just wanted to say thank you and how much I appreciate both of you. You have gotten me through these months of all of us just being on the edge of our chairs and going through all the emotions and doing everything we can to help Ukraine. And if it wasn't for the knowledge that you guys have bestowed upon myself, I would never even know what attacks are. So thank you.
You're welcome, Candace. And we know it was a little rough there, but it bore fruit. You're now here.
I know. Now that I'm here, I'm gonna stay here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm promise. I'm kidding. I will drop down to listener. Just had to see and check to make sure I'm still in the green, in the go, and I am.
That you are. That you are.
And maybe it is your special touch, because the first time I went up, I was allowed to request the mic. Was the very first night that you co-hosted, right after you crashed the space. That I thought I had crashed the space, so then I was like, I'm never gonna request mic. Until then, 2 hours later, I was like, I'm trying. But you had the special touch, and I could just listen to you say anything and everything about the tanks. And Ben, I appreciate all of your knowledge regarding your knowledge.
He's got a bunch, so that's
It's
what
endless.
they all say.
Economy, France, babies, hosting, how to whisper. Not so much. And really, you guys are heroes. Thank you for running this space. And if you ever need someone to chat with, I listen all day, every day, and have since February 23rd. It's that important.
All right. Okay. Candace, I'm going to go to some more hands here, if you don't mind.
No,
Okay.
please. Thank you so much, and have a great night. And you're awesome, and you rock, all of you. I love all of you so much. Thank you.
Merci.
Merci.
Love you too.
All right,
Merci.
thanks.
Let's see. Bayonades.
Leonardo, yeah.
Leonardo.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to also compliment Ben. I think, Ben, you have a really calm, nice, and sometimes sarcastic kind of style of moderating, and it's much appreciated. I like it. And the other thing is about the social experiment or the bet, or what you said about the tanks. Would you specify what kind of tanks you're talking about?
Main battle tanks.
Okay. So yeah, let's make it for a good cause. So I will donate 50 euro or $50 to MriyaReport if France will actually deliver main battle tanks before Germany does.
No, let's do it the other way around. if Germany delivers first, you get some serious bragging rights. So to compensate, you need to put some money in. If France does, I get some bragging rights, and I'll put some money to MriyaReport.
Or we just bought both too. but I really fear none of the both countries will. But I really hope. Maybe I think the Americans today some kind of virtue signalizing. I want to use the term in this way, saying some kind of main battle tanks are on the table, but not yet. So I think it was a how we say in Germany, a wink with a Zaunpfahl. Signing with the post. So everybody can see it. I think hopefully something happens soon, but I'm not sure about Olaf Scholz. And on the other hand, I think today Putin just wanted to say they are already done to withdraw from Ukraine, but he couldn't take a heart, so he just postponed it.
Yeah, I think the postponement is just plain strange, and just plays further in this this strong sentiment of complete incompetence of the Russians. So yeah, but yeah, social experiment, you're on. Ian, your hand is up. Good evening.
Yeah, sorry if it's loud, but I'm on a walk. But I just shared a tweet in the Nest because it piqued my interest and had me thinking of a few other questions. Like there's a little tweet in the Nest regarding some sort of plane, presumably owned by the Russian government, a diplomatic plane that Lavrov has used in the past, apparently heading to JFK. Could be a number of things, but do we know? Does anybody know if how many Russian diplomats are left working in the United States? Has anybody kept track of that? Are the Russians that are in the U.S. are they maybe just UN staff, or do you have other diplomats here? Just wondering if anybody has an idea.
Daryl, you're the American.
Let me repeat that for a second, please.
Yeah, so I shared a tweet in the Nest. It's regarding presumably a Russian government-owned plane, a plane that has been used for diplomatic missions in the past. You know, traveling Lavrov, and most recently, apparently, according to the tweet, you know, and that plane apparently is heading to JFK. It could be doing anything from some sort of secret meeting with a Russian diplomat, or it could be just you know, maybe they're sending some more of their diplomats home, but maybe it could just be UN related in New York. Maybe I don't know. I was just wondering. That tweet had me thinking, questioning: does the U.S. Are there Russian diplomats still in the U.S.? You know, I'm sure they've sent some of them home with tit for tat stuff. They've sent some of our diplomats home, but do you have a sense of what Russians are left in the United States, either UN or other diplomatic missions?
Well, no, they still have diplomats here. We haven't sent all of their diplomats home. This maybe have something to do with maybe the UN, possibly because of the crimes against humanity that have been that are now coming up full circle in the diplomatic areas. But I'm not going to speculate anything more because it's a plane coming into the U.S. They could do it all the time. Flying into D.C., they have a embassy there. It could be changing out someone. It could be them having high-level meetings with their subordinates. It could be anything. With the message, you know, just like everything that's happened on Russian media today. Things are being made. There are suppositions being made, and until time passes, we won't have any real information. We should just wait and see. Be prepared for anything, but just wait and see. They want us in reactionary mode. That's the whole reason they do everything they do. They want everyone to react to their actions. So if we don't react and get excited about something, then it loses the effect, and we just play it with knowledge. We resort to knowledge, what actually happened, and that's how we do. That's how we act logically on things that they do. We do the logical thing, not the reactionary thing.
Amen.
Good afternoon, CJ. How you doing?
Oh, I'm always doing great, and great to see you co-hosting as well, Daryl. How's the day been so far?
Well, you mean here on the space?
Well, of course.
I'm doing fine.
I'm always
I'm doing
interested in you
fine.
personally, though, too.
I'm doing fine. Well, we had a very successful interview today, and it went on for quite a while, and we had a lot of people join us for it. So that's I think that's a really good thing, if you know what I mean. Anytime, we've had a lot of speakers on here, and when they generate the traffic like that, that means we're getting a lot of good information out to the people, and he certainly did that for us today. So, CJ, I'm going to defer to a hand here, and let's see if that one's for you by chance. Eli, good evening, sir.
Hey, how's it going? I love this space. I appreciate all the info you guys are getting out there. I came on today because I just read this Telegraph article, or I don't know. I think it was the podcast. They were talking about a move where they might possibly do a referendum in Luhansk to make it Russian territory. Therefore, if any Ukrainians go there, it's a direct attack of sovereign or quote unquote sovereign Russian territory and a full-on war, and that would justify a mobilization. You guys have probably been talking about this. I just haven't heard it.
It's only in their mind.
Yeah.
That whole provocation would be only in their mind.
Is that an actual possibility? And if so, what do you suppose the West's reaction would be to it? And is the West doing anything significant
It's
to
not
stop
what
that?
it's not what we would do, it's what Ukraine is doing. They are getting their land back. Regardless of what Russia says, they don't control the situation on the ground, except for where their soldiers stand for the minute. Otherwise, those feet are going to be going back to Russia. So,
of course, I'm just talking about the potential that political move that would then justify, or that they would then use to justify war.
It's theater. It's theater for their population. That's for home consumption. You will get the folks here in the States that will react. Ooh, they're going to do nukes and all of that. And it's just for those that will react to it. So I'm gonna let Leonard and CJ back me up and or see what they have to say about this. Leonard, go for it.
Thank you, Daryl. And yes, just further for Eli, I assume that you just kind of came across this this bit of Russian propaganda just en passant, or just kind of cruising through different things, and you should just simply put it in perspective. This is just one more in 1,000 different Russian feeble attempts at legalizing or putting an unduly legalistic frame on whatever kind of nefarious undertakings they're up to. And it is truly nothing more than that. Any semblance or sham of a referendum in either Luhansk or the Donetsk at this point in time is an utter laughable entity in the West. The English-speaking world would give less credence to a Russian decree or referendum conducted in today's circumstances out of the Donbass. The English-speaking world would give less credence to that than they would to their next roll of toilet tissue. So you should just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And it is nothing but grasping at straws by the Kremlin, the current Kremlin cabal, who are in a state of panic, looking around and literally grasping for straws, because every single life preserver, if you will, or attempted life preserver is sinking on them. So this is nothing more than that. So it's just simply a curiosity, another example of curiosity put forth on their Telegram channels, and should be treated accordingly. So I appreciate your interest and that as a academically perhaps an area of inquiry, but it is truly just nothing but a Russian propaganda sham, and would be regarded as such by every Western democracy. So hopefully that assists.
If I may, I am completely aware that it's a sham and complete BS. I guess my question is more of like, is it? I mean, it seems like something that they would actually act on. You know, they go through the sham. They say, "Oh, everybody wants to be part of Russia. We're now part of Russia," and so now we are acting on this, even though everybody knows it's a sham. That's all they act on is BS and shams. So, is this something that they might possibly act on? And is it possible that a general mobilization could come out of this?
Okay, so let's just go down that road just a step. So you posed the question. So now the next question that you should try to answer is, what possible benefit could be garnered to the Russian Federation by such a move? And maybe, I don't know if you've thought about that, but perhaps take a second, think about it, and see if you can think of anything.
I just thought it would be a justification for general mobilization. You guys are the experts, so please forgive any ignorance on my part. I'm just trying to follow along.
Well, again, general mobilization is a concept. It's an English word, and really in the Russian context, it doesn't mean anything. There's really no Russian context that would equate to the concept of general mobilization in the West as we know it.
Or like a declaration of war, perhaps?
Well, again, then take one step down that road. What benefit do you garner from declaring a war in a setting where you are literally 1 centimeter from NATO's borders, with a totally depleted, exhausted, dilapidated, and chaotic in complete random retreat Russian army? How does the declaration of war get you anything but a mass grave in that situation?
I guess I got to do a little more reading on that. I thought that I thought there had larger ramifications in Russia as a whole, that they could bring up conscript.
May I help?
I think I've probably taken enough of your time. I'll do more reading.
No, that's okay. May I help?
Yes, please.
Okay. One thing, and this is, I think, what is implied also by what Leonard is alluding to. It is true that for the Russian government, in its wonderful obsessiveness and over formality, a good flashback to Soviet history, that a declaration of war helps them to introduce more oblast by oblast, region by region, and territory or autonomous republic by autonomous republic, more capacity to force conscription. It's completely correct. technically that could help them. However, even if so, and that's what Leonard is reflecting, because we had the discussion earlier also with Colonel Spencer, and we had the discussion earlier on with Pekka Torvedi, that is the former head, until recently, of the Finnish military intelligence, and a well-known tank commander and general of the Finnish armed forces. The problem is that they cannot train up as many soldiers as they would technically need, equip them. They don't have the trainers to start with. They don't have the time to train them up, to make them useful. They do not have the officer and non-commissioned officer corps available to lead them, guide them, and administrate them. And they also fail to have the full set of equipment they would need in order to make them forceful from both a force design and a force composition and equipment perspective, in order to meet Ukraine and the Ukrainian armed forces timely enough in battle. As Colonel Spencer highlighted very clearly this evening, a little while ago, maybe before you joined, is that Ukraine, no matter the weather, because they're used to it, they're good at this weather, which is coming, meaning autumn in the north, dry autumn in the south, cold, rasputitsa, wet autumn, and then snow and ice and cold. They're good at it. They're used to it. It's their home. It's their territory. They understand it. You have to understand that the whole territory of Ukraine is extremely well understood by the Ukrainian armed forces. It is pre-sighted, meaning they know for thousands of scenarios where to shoot at, where to cross, how to go somewhere, how to defend something, how to take something. So Ukraine, no matter the weather, will not stop. Whereas the occupation army, the Russian armed forces, operate with outdated maps, with data they have gained in certain areas for longer than others, with a lack of sophisticated capacity, with a lack of combined arms capacity for their existing forces, dwindling, degraded supply lines, lack of precision-guided ammunition, and a complete and utter incapacity in resisting the ever-increasing Western material and equipment. As such, whether they mobilize under the guise of martial law introduced in certain regions, a declaration of war to go alongside that or preceding it, doesn't really matter, because they cannot achieve what they've already lost. They cannot attain their strategic objectives. The Ukrainian government is still in force. Its army is unbeaten. They cannot hold the territory. And coming back to your initial question, if they were to now, with whatever kind of sham referendum, try to annex territories which do not belong to them, they would face the formal question, even under Russian law, that how can it be that in those territories which we, Russia, now annex, we don't have a hold on all of the territory? Zaporizhia Oblast is not theirs to have. They don't even have the regional capital. They don't have clarity on Luhansk Oblast. They do not own Donetsk Oblast. They have even lost Kherson Oblast. The only oblast where they really have clarity on it is Crimea, and that they had to take by hook or by crook in 2014 temporarily. No. Whatever kind of tragic Potemkin idea they're projecting, they will fail.
Thanks a lot for your time, guys.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome indeed. So Athena was next, and CJ, after Nick. Go ahead, Athena.
Thank you, Ben. And hi, everybody. Axel, you were there when Pekka Toveri was speaking. I would like to hear from your perspective, what was the most... what are you laughing, Bionage? I know what you're laughing. Okay, Axel, my question is that what was the like? You are distracting me with your laughs here. What did you? What was your what did you appreciate the most? What he said, and what is this laughing here?
I don't see it. I don't see the laughing. Maybe he's too far down. I can't see it. Go ahead, Linda.
I think what can be most appreciated about Pekka Toveri is the clarity of thought, which he so readily and easily expresses in equally clear language and in a straightforward, hot knife cutting through butter precision.
Axel, thank you, and I have to agree with you. It's like very easy to follow what he's saying. And somebody has a hot mic.
Igor, you got a hot mic, sir. If you guys just
Yes,
added you in,
I muted myself.
Okay, if you would just raise your hand, that way I can put you guys in the order. Okay, appreciate it. Same with you, Village. I just added you in. If you would raise your hand, I can get you in. But I'm going to follow the hands. Thank you. Nick, you want to go? No, wait a minute. Was it CJ or Nick? Was it Nick or CJ?
It was CJ. He's angry today, so I think Nick wants to avoid fighting CJ. The man just carries artillery on his back for fun.
Something like that. I ran around all day shooting 105. So just real quickly, two sort of strange additional thoughts to the mobilization and all the sort of hullabaloo of the day is, as someone correctly pointed out, with the possible annexation, on paper of these areas, Russia will actually not have to pay conscripts or their military forces for the full deployment money due to the fact that they would be, quote, fighting on sovereign lands, which actually decreases the amount of pay they're eligible for. So that's one definitely interesting financial takeaway. And the second was there was, obviously with the initial invasion, there was a decent amount of conscripts used, which is something that Putin came under a lot of fire for, whether intentional or not. Long story short, it made some people in Russia upset. And so the thought is this move, again, all on paper, all BS, might be to allow more usage of conscripts that they already have on, quote, sovereign Russian territory. So again, if anything, it's just a legal wrangling, for more obviously internal domestic politics, but again, not a real thing in any other sense of the word. Any sort of talk of any escalation or any of the other BS is just distraction from Ukraine doing extremely well. This is, I think, the 10th referendum between all the different oblasts they've tried, and they've postponed every one. And as we'll note, 72 hours ago, Bilovarica in Luhansk came back under Ukrainian control, which is extremely important because it means Ukraine has their foot in the door in Luhansk. Which means if Russia declares this a sovereign territory, well, they're about to lose it. So that would be doubly embarrassing than just losing as it is. So again, not likely to go through.
All right.
Yeah, you're forgetting an important factor, CJ, is that Russians seem to be looking for embarrassment these days. So whatever you would consider as the least likely is the one they will they will do with Costa. Sorry, Nick. I've forced CJ down your throat, but you should thank me for I saved your life, basically.
I just want to add to what Leonard and Axel said to Eli, really, if I presume Eli is still listening, that Russia doesn't need the idea that Russia would use something as ludicrous as, oh, well, we're occupying these territories. Quick, they're Russia now, right? You have to stop attacking. The idea that they would use that as an excuse, it seems to be utterly ludicrous, because if Russia wants to declare mobilization, or Russia wants to have martial law, or indeed drop a nuclear weapon on Kiev, they aren't going to do it on the basis of some utterly pathetic excuse that reminds me of nothing more than when you ask an 11-year-old child to comply with some order, and they come up with some extraordinarily convoluted way of doing it that's semantically, in theory, compatible, but in practice everyone knows they're not doing it. Eat your vegetables or something, and they, I don't know, put the word vegetables on a piece of paper and eat it and go, huh, huh, huh. I mean, it really is at that level, as Axel said, Potemkin level. It's ersatz law, and we in the West are used to this idea that, okay, you have boundaries, you do this, you don't invade another person's country, but we understand that the reasons you don't do that is because ultimately there's a legal remedy at the end of it that will come back and get you. The Russia changing the rules about what is and isn't Russia makes no sense, because what they're doing now is illegal, and what they've done then is illegal, and there isn't a court in the world that will think that what they've done is. And nor, come to that, are there any Russians who might currently be hesitating about, there may be Russians who might be having doubts about the Ukraine operation, but they're not going to go, oh, well, it's okay, it's now officially, we've annexed it. So it's a ridiculous game that that only impresses people who don't take 2 seconds to realize that it's a ridiculous game. And perhaps people imagine that international law can be made by one country unilaterally saying, this is our border now. If you're that kind of idiot, then maybe you might get impressed with it. But again, I don't think very many of those people are currently on the fence about whether we should be, helping Ukraine or not. So the whole thing is just a ridiculous circus, and it's frankly embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see adults, and moderately educated adults, perhaps not in the case of Putin, but there are people in the Russian hierarchy, I'm sure, with high school leaving certificates, or 50-meter swim certificates or something, and it's just embarrassing for these people. So if Putin wants to do any of those things, he will do it anyway, and the fact that he does or doesn't have some pathetic fake referendum that even that nobody within 1,000 miles of him thinks is real isn't going to, either in de facto or de jure, justify it. He's going to do it anyway, so we can just ignore it. We can just save the time and ignore it. All it does is fill up Western news outlets talking about it, and we should ignore it when they print it too.
Hi, I am from Egypt. I want to talk about another problem who I
Once
I on Egypt. I face a lot of problem with Egypt government. I am maybe an activist from Egypt. I have a problem.
Excuse me, doctor. Hello, doctor. There's a lot of noise on your mic, and we have a process where we use the hands. So if you wish to speak, use your hand. We'll bring you up. But for right now, I need you to mute your mic. Thank you.
Daryl, the thing is, the good doctor has been trying to speak for over 2 weeks now, and every single time there's those weird noises. So if he manages to speak, I think we should let him speak. But unfortunately, the noise seems to have come back.
Okay, all right. I just thought they burst in. Okay, all right, Doc. If we can get your mic back up and we don't hear those noises, it's just that it was very annoying. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doc.
Abdul.
Yes, I talk about my problem as Nubian activist on Egypt. I face a lot of problem incitement against me at media, harassment. I can't live on Egypt because the Egypt government hate me and want to get rid of me. I face a lot of problem because I talk about Nubian rights on Egypt and Sudan. I want help to leave Egypt. Egypt is not safe for me or my family.
Okay, Daryl. No. Doctor, we feel for you. I think that maybe some of us might be able to help you. Please send me a DM. I don't think that we can solve this on the space on air. That wouldn't work like that. But yeah, contact me by DM. We'll do it quietly. Thanks a lot. Returning to the hands, there's I think we had Leonard first, Igor, and finance.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, I was just going to respond briefly to Athena's point, and a point very well raised, Athena, with reference to General Pekka and the value of his commentary earlier today. A remarkable contribution to the site. And I would just kind of underscore the importance, at least as I see it, of what he gave to us, is the kind of importance that you garner whenever you speak to, shall we say, a great man or a great general. And some of us have had experiences where you talk to somebody of that caliber with that depth of experience, and you learn quickly that in one sentence they can encapsulate 10 years of experience or accumulated wisdom and knowledge that have been garnered over 10 years or 20 years or even more. And I would say that is precisely where our regard for Pekka, or certainly my regard for Pekka and his General Pekka, and his contribution stands. He laid matters out with such crystal clarity and with such depth of experience that just a matter of a few words from him can evoke literally months and years of accumulated wisdom. So I would put that in the same category, for example, of if you listen and talk to General Ben Hodges, same thing. You just get a vast insight into 30 plus years of granular experience, hard earned, and so on, and delivered with such humble and self abnegating, if you will, just such selflessness. It's really quite remarkable. And I would put the General James Mattis, of U.S. Marine General, in the same category. People who, I mean, gentlemen who, if you spend any time listening to them or in their presence, it's just you stand in awe of the value of what they can convey in such short time parameters. And General Pekka, in my estimation, stands precisely there. And I think the more times we can have him back to contribute to this space, the better we are. So thank you greatly for that, Athena. It was an excellent contribution. Thank you.
Okay, you guys need to stop saying good things about the general, because I'm going to be really jolly to have missed it. Igor, please go ahead. Okay. Igor is terrified. Did I say something wrong? Finance, did I say something wrong to Igor?
Hello, gentlemen. Sorry, I'm trying to deal with my echo situation. So yesterday, I think Chernobylka get hit 2 times, 3 times. What's our count on this most amazing of Russian scrap metal?
We're rounding down to 50. And we decided not to speak about it again until we reach 100.
I was hoping Daryl could comment. There's nobody who comments better on the joys of the military aptitude of the Russians at Chernobylka than Daryl. Daryl, could as the host, this is the first time I've enjoyed you hosting. Could you give us some guidance on what it means to have Chernobylka hit for like the 40, 50, whatever time yesterday, twice, back to back?
I feel like walking on pebbles. I place my feet on the pebbles of Chernobylka. My vehicle burning flesh. It is such a warm day. Oh, Chernobylka. My vehicle, my country. It hates you. I have nothing. Again, my feet hit the pebbles.
World class. World class.
I want more.
I think that's a good place for vehicles to die. Vehicles. If you don't love it, send it to Chernobylka. That's the way, hey, you don't like it, you don't like a pilot, send them to Chernobylka. You don't like that plane ain't flying right, send it to Chernobylka. It's just a place where they're sending their things to die. They want it to die the death in battle. That's how they do it. Not that it's in battle; it's just sitting there, but that's how they want it.
Daryl, that's too funny. But my phone is about to expire on the battery, so I have to leave. I will be back later. And thank you again, Daryl, for your contribution.
Thank you, Leonard. I will see you later.
Daryl, to follow up, I want to tell you that here at the Atacam's brand cigarette company, we had a problem, which is Chernobylka gets hit so much they're not really the customer of the month anymore. Our head of the marketing department has suggested that we really need to run a customer of the hour advertisements for them to thank them for their hourly contribution to smoking, because truly nobody smokes more. I'm actually going to be I'm gonna have the smallest twinge of sadness. Be beautiful when it's liberated, but like one of the smallest tinge of sadness, because I truly don't know how you could more efficiently eliminate Russian stuff than by just leaving them the territory of Chernobylka. Like maybe the Ukrainians could like take everything else and take that last, because the rate at which they're able to like destroy equipment at Chernobylka truly is unmatched, I think, in military history. Like, has there historically, since World War I, ever been any specific strip of land that has repeatedly over the course of months just been hit more times than, a boxer trying to stand up against, in a featherweight match? Like, he can't get knocked out. He just keeps getting smoked. Like, what's going on here?
Usually it works the other way around. They keep hitting it because it's indestructible. That's what usually happens. In this case, Russia is not listening to the logic of why things get hit multiple times. It's not that it's indestructible. It's just that you make it so damn easy. It's like, give me that candy, baby. Give it to me. Because that's what it is. So, are we going to make the airman the new sales? I mean, not sales rep, but the new model for the Atacams now?
We have
Russian
multiple.
pilot. Russian pilot.
I would note that we have multiple Atacams marketers listening to this amazing conversation who are laughing and messaging me. So I'm sure the marketing team will come up with something for the latest in Atacams customer service and support. We truly appreciate all their business here at the Atacams Brand Cigarette Company and their ability to disperse Russian equipment with smoking. Just remember, everybody, that smoking kills. So please only smoke responsibly. Lately at Chernobylka.
Hey, did you guys ever get that snuff product going?
You know what? I have not named anything for snuff. Currently, though, we now have chewing tobacco. Chewing tobacco is the coverage for all tracked vehicles. Every once in a while, we find we need to have a tracked vehicle that needs an explanation. And so the British marketing department, headed up by our good friend Gunny, came up with an excellent advertisement for Twardies because, nothing's strong like Polish strong. And there's a beautiful advertisement that I've slapped up, created by the British marketing department. HR has cleared him. Apparently, they also were laughing their rears off at his horrifically inappropriate advertisements. And so here at the Atacams Brand Cigarette Company, if we find your stuff funny, you can be totally inappropriate, and we will just keep posting the Russians with it. So thank you very much to the British marketing department for that amazing service to the cause of messing with the Russians. But yes, so no, that's what's going on. We do not yet have a snuff-based product. So if we find the need or something new that goes boom, hits the field, we'll be happy to designate it with the amazing Atacams Brand Stuff product. But as of yet, the Ukrainians haven't come up with something that requires a snuff-based product yet. We're not against any specific tobacco-based product lines as long as we can share it with our friends the Russians and help them fly. We're gonna maybe have the Atacams Brand space program at this rate. We attempt to send Russians to orbit because they really haven't had a space program that works for in a while. Their economy's having trouble. We don't really know how they go back up to the International Space Station anymore because no one wants to work with them. So we're just going to help launch their soldiers into space, as many as we can. That's our next goal here, the Atacams Brand Cigarette Company. So please remember, smoking kills. So only smoke responsibly at your nearest Russian ammo dump, and of course, Chernobylka.
Thank you very much. A smooth smoke. There's nothing like it. And with that, we're going to go to Dinjo.
Thank you very much. And I have a question for Mr. Ben. What did Mr. Macron say in the UN General Assembly today?
To be honest, I don't know. I just read a quick summary where it was like, it seems that he started by saying something along the lines of Russia should never have invaded Ukraine, that this is the stuff of the 19th century. It is not done anymore. We won't stand for it. Good stuff, nothing amazing, but good stuff. And apparently he ended up by saying, but we should still talk with Russia. So, a bit confusing. That being said, I've remarked that somebody must have reached to the French newspapers, because up until now, when they were talking about the so-called DNR and LNR, they were going, they were using something along the lines of an expression that went, the pro-Russian breakaway republics, something like this. And now they're being openly called terrorist in the French press, and that seems to be the designation the mainstream French press is going for, terrorist. I have no idea how it happened, why it happened, who got to them. Two newspapers are saying this at the moment. Very strange, but I think we're things are going to get a bit clearer fairly soon, and we'll get an old guy wearing how do you call that? Wearing glasses and cash call, who will look at us and say, "This is I," and we'll know they've arrived.
Okay, thanks, Ben. That's sounds like a slight change of the tide. It's good news, I guess.
Yeah, I think that from the beginning, the French were more or less trying to follow the lead of the Germans, but now the Germans have been twisting and turning so much that even the ever slippery Monsieur Macron is not able to follow them anymore, and he's finding it more and more interesting to make a stand. So, fingers crossed.
I found the speech on YouTube, but for the moment I haven't found an English subtitle version. So I can watch it, but it's half an hour. But if I find a version with subtitles or a transcript, I'll pop up.
Thank you, Nick. Daryl, you brought in Mr. Crypto. So, Mr. Crypto, welcome on board.
Hey guys, good evening. How's everyone doing? All good?
All good.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, my question was like somewhat different. I know we are still in the middle of, fog of war and everything that is going on. Situation seems to be changing like 1 second to another. I have no doubt that at the end of the day, no invader coming into your country when you know the country and everything you trained on your country can actually win. I mean, look at Afghanistan, people. I mean, you cannot beat the US, and the US had to come back from there from like logistics, whatever. When ultimately the war ends on the Ukrainian soil and the Russians are out, what happens then? It's like, what are people gonna do? Because it's like it's a massive thing that is happening. It's like people are dying, Ukrainians are paying in blood, and the destruction on the territory is just immense. So how is Russia going to pay this back? And if we have any tool to do that? Thank you. That's my question.
I sure hope Axel has heard you, because it's fairly and squarely in his wheelhouse. Even though talking about the post-war is extremely difficult, also a bit of bad luck. We'd rather concentrate on defeating the Russians, helping the Ukrainians defeat the Russians as fast as possible, and then build away from that. We don't know if Russia is still going to exist. We don't know who's going to be leading the country. We don't know anything. There's really a lot of question marks that are remaining. Things like, will the Russians keep shelling Ukraine or not? Will a peace be signed or not? All those questions are remaining and need to be asked before we can answer them. It's very difficult for me, at the very least, to begin answering your question, because there's too much unknown. Maybe somebody on the panel is willing to take to give it a try. Yeah, no, apparently not. It's too uncertain. it's way too uncertain. We cannot begin to help you. The one thing we can say for sure is that the clearer, faster, and more resounding the Ukrainian victory, the better position the Ukrainian government will be in to negotiate and obtain what it expects to get from the peace.
Okay, thank you.
I will say this, knowing speculating on the Russian point of view, Russia will try to see the loss and still try to exert power over the peace process. That's just I kind of see it as a given for the way they are. They've never negotiated from a losing position, and they will most likely try to pull out a win, even though they're beat. In my respect.
Thank you. Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that, because I mean it's from March to Kiev to the front line on Belgorod, or it's always a tactical regrouping. There is always an excuse, and it's always someone else's fault, and it's kind of like frustrating to see that, like what should be a superpower doing something like that, like coming up with that kind of excuses. I don't know, it's disturbing time to time, but you guys are absolutely right. Hopefully we'll see a Ukrainian victory sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Not hopefully. We're sure to see it. The question is when. I think Gina was next, and then we can go to Betty and Jaras.
Hi, good evening, guys. Love listening to you. I did see on Nexta TV, which I think is a Baltic TV network,